Hey, truth seekers, welcome to another edition of Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet and around the world via satellite radio on the Liberty Radio Network and on over 140 radio stations in the U.S. We have a great guest coming on today. It's going to be an incredibly interesting episode. We've been talking about so many things lately, spiritual stuff. We've also been talking about economics. We've been talking about love, all kinds of stuff. We've been getting into all sorts of different areas. And one area we really haven't gotten into lately are conspiracy theories. And there's a lot to talk about that. And we actually, it's going to be an incredibly interesting episode. Let's just put it that way. We have who I consider to be the world's leading person trying to bring forth this theory on the flat Earth theory. And now, don't turn off your computer yet. Don't just laugh and go, these guys are crazy. Give us a minute or two here to talk about what we're talking about, because I've looked into this and it has some very valid points. And I'm not saying I believe in it at all, because I just found out about it about a month or two ago. But when you hear some of these points, you're going to go, whoa, this is very interesting. And so we're going to get into all of that. He's coming in from Bangkok in Thailand, in my old neighborhood where I used to live in that area. He's been there for about 10 years. His name is Dubay. He's written numerous books, including The Flat Earth Conspiracy, The Atlantean Conspiracy, Spiritual Science, and Asbestos Head. He's very prolific. He's also very well spoken and very well written, which I found very interesting. He doesn't really come off as one of these wild, crazy sort of people at all when he's talking about these wild, crazy ideas. To some people, he comes off very professional, and you're going to see that. So stick around and at least see what he has to say, because I think you're going to find it very interesting, as I did. So let's get right into it, Eric. I got to ask you, first thing, we got to check your credentials, make sure you're a good person, at least morally sound and person. How did you become an anarchist?
There you go. Yeah, just trying to find what is the viable system of government. What is the only morally viable system of government? As you start ticking down the list, it's like a process of elimination, and you find yourself an anarchist or a voluntarist, because it really is the only moral option. If you hold morality above dogma of any other sort, then you're going to come to the point where you realize that all the other forms of government, they include taxation, coercion, a monopoly of force, violence. And the word government itself just means govern, to control, like mental, the mind. So it's like mind control. And in reality, it doesn't even exist. It's an idea. There is no such thing as government. There's just people who believe in this idea of government and then use this fallacious power they've given themselves over everyone else. And everyone believes it. And so that's how we're kind of corralled by this belief system called government that doesn't even exist in the first place. So I'm into things that exist, and so that's why I'm into anarchy.
Yeah, government is conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
I really want to just jump right into this because I found it fascinating. Let me give you a little bit of the background about what happened here. So many people know that I've been researching many things over the years, not as heavily as you. I haven't written any books on it or anything, but I've been just looking into a lot of things. And I think the first one that just blew my mind was 9/11. And how anyone can look at what happened there and think that what the government said happened is true just goes to show the amount of mind control they have over people, because it's just physically impossible what they said happened. I'd like to see someone try to knock down 3 skyscrapers with 2 planes at free fall speeds in a laboratory experiment. Just build a model. Show me how that works. And then you go on and on. So 9/11, I'm 100%. There's not even a whisker of doubt that what the government said about it is not the truth. Once you see the evidence, you can't just think anything else unless you're completely brainwashed or totally deluded. And so I started looking into other things. I was like, well, if 9/11 wasn't what they said it was, what else isn't? And it's pretty much everything else. So I started looking into everything, and it's like every single thing was fake or some sort of a hoax or some sort of a setup. Even the Vietnam War, the Gulf of Tonkin, that's one's public, but no one talks about it, where the U.S. Army or Navy sank their own ship just to get into the Vietnam War, and that's actually been put out by them, and no one really notices. No one seems to care, as George Carlin said. They're all fairly not connected or not paying attention. I guess the next one that really started to blow my mind was the moon landing. I'm not 100% sure it was fake, so I want to just be honest here. Like with 9/11, I will stand by it 100%. 100%, I have no doubt in my mind that that was not what they said it was. Moon landing, I'm about 98% now. I've been going up 1% per year for the last couple of years, the more I look into it. And so then I had a person send me some stuff on the flat Earth theory. And I was like probably what the people watching right now are doing, going like, oh, come on. Like, you know, they can't, like, that's too crazy. I know this other stuff sounded crazy at the time, but that's too crazy. The place where we live has been a total lie. So I ignored him, actually. And this is sort of like a friend. I didn't ignore him, but I just said, yeah, I watched a bit. I don't know. You know, that's too much. But he kept sending it. And then I started noticing all over the internet people talking more and more about it. So I'd watch another video or read another thing and look at this evidence. And finally, after a certain period of time, I was like, is there something to this? Because what's going on here? And then I came across you, and that's where this all started with me and you, is that I saw what you were doing. I watched a couple of your videos, your interviews, and you were the most well-spoken on it and the most rational. You've written a whole book on it, and you've got so much evidence on it. So I was like, well, and I found out you were an anarchist. I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting. He's actually a morally sound and a peaceful person, which is very rare. And that's a markup in my book any day. So maybe I should talk to this guy and see what's going on. So that's where we're at. I'm going to let you talk for as long as you want on this, and I know you're going to probably be doing, giving us some images and stuff as you talk, if you'd like. I'd first just like to preface before you talk here that Aristotle said that it's the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it, and that's all I'm saying here. I'm not saying that I have accepted the flat Earth theory. I'm just saying I'm entertaining it. I've seen they've got a lot of good information on why this could be true, and so I'm just going to let you go with that. So Eric, you know, take the floor a little bit here and tell us, if you want, tell us a little bit about maybe how you found out about this theory or got into this theory, and then give us your best shot at explaining to someone who's never heard this before why this theory has potential or could be true.
Sure. When they first started explaining it to me in school, I do distinctly remember raising my hand and not understanding how the spinning ball Earth would keep people and the oceans from falling off the bottom, right? And they tried to explain gravity, and, you know, okay, I'm shaking my head and writing down the answers, and, you know, over time you see the NASA images and you just go along to get along, but it was always a nagging doubt in my mind, so I brought that into my 20s when I actually got into conspiracies with 9/11 as well. That was the first kind of breakthrough, unplugging me from the Matrix kind of event that got me into the whole conspiracy scene in the first place. So I definitely learned how to suspend judgment while you look at evidence, like you were talking about, and you got to do that for this flat Earth thing, because you think you've got so much evidence and proof, and that the Earth is a spinning ball. You've seen it from NASA. You've heard some proofs that your teachers have given you. You've seen the globe on the desk for years, but in fact, the horizon, for instance, is always completely flat. And you don't feel any motion. So if you were just born today and looked out, you wouldn't assume that you're standing on a spinning ball. You'd assume that you were on a flat, motionless plane. So to assume that we are on a spinning ball is actually contrary to our common sense and our everyday experience. And there's also experiments that have been done to test whether we're on a spinning ball or not. For instance, amateur balloons have been sent up past 20 miles, amateur rockets as well, and the horizon rises all the way up with the camera up to 20 miles up, and it's flat all the way around. Now, in NASA images, they claim to be hundreds and hundreds of miles up, and then you start to see curvature. But if you notice, these images are often clearly CGI, computer graphic images, sometimes not so clearly. Sometimes the earlier ones were actually done through a round window, So they've used many different tricks throughout the years, but NASA is essentially Hollywood, and all the images that you think you've seen of a spinning ball Earth are faked. And all the amateur balloon and rocket footage that we've sent up there shows a flat horizon that rises all the way up. And that's impossible on a ball. No matter how big a ball is, as you rise up, you would have to look down to be able to see the horizon. The horizon would not rise up with you. That's a characteristic of an extended flat plane. And when you're in an airplane, you can see out both windows, and you can see the horizon at eye level at 35,000 feet and higher, out both windows. But think about it. If you're on a ball, over a ball, no matter how big that ball is, you shouldn't be able to see the horizon out your plane window. Now, some people think that they see the curvature of the ball out their plane window, but in fact they're just seeing the curvature of the glass, because the windows are all slightly curved to fit with the fuselage. And when you look at the horizon through a window like that, it does give a slight effect. And GoPros and traditional cameras, wide-angle fisheye lenses, they also give this kind of effect. So a lot of footage you'll see of the horizon, it'll warp, and sometimes it'll be convex, sometimes it'll be concave, but as the camera stops moving and stops tilting, it will always pan out to completely flat and on level with the camera. Again, this is just impossible on a ball. It doesn't matter how big the ball is. The ball could be 10 times larger. They tell us it's 25,000 miles in circumference. Even if it was 25 million miles in circumference, if you're above it, you're above it. You would have to look down to the horizon. But you just never will on the Earth, the actual Earth. So the horizon proof is one obvious one, a go-to. Another one is just the natural physics of water. It's the natural physics of water to find and remain at level. If water is dammed up and then released, it will flow out in all directions until it becomes level again. But on a spinning ball Earth, we would have to have oceans that were hundreds of miles of curved water. And this is impossible. I mean, they can't show you any example of this happening, but they claim this is what's happening on the Earth. And then they claim that there's a force called gravity that holds these oceans in just so, it's strong enough to hold the oceans in, but weak enough to allow, bugs to take off and smoke to rise out a chimney. So the magical force of gravity, which was created by knighted Freemason, Sir Isaac Newton, is basically their go-to answer that explains away anything they have a problem with. Gravity is what they say caused the Big Bang somehow. Gravity is what formed the planets and the sun. Gravity is what causes the planets to orbit around the sun and moons to orbit around planets. Gravity is what causes the water to stick to the planets. Gravity is what causes the tides from the moon. You name it, gravity does it, as far as they're concerned. But in the flat Earth model, gravity is just density or buoyancy. In other words, an object in a medium, depending on their relative densities, will float or sink based on the friction between the two. So whether it's a gas, liquid, or solid, heavy, dense things sink and light things float. There really is an up and down in nature. They try to tell us that everything's a ball, and so up and down is an illusion. People in Australia are hanging upside down, and they don't know it. So that's another philosophical impossibility they kind of get us to believe by thinking that gravity sucks everything into the center of the ball and holds us under the ball. Meanwhile, gravity causes planets to orbit around us. So like I said, when they want to, gravity causes some things to stick to and we could become central, and sometimes it causes them to orbit things. Sometimes it causes big bangs, apparently. Gravity's a big catch-all term for whatever they want it to be.
Am I right on that I heard that gravity really has never been proven? Like, what did they say gravity is? Like, do they even have like some sort of model, or is it just a word?
Yeah, they've got plenty of calculations, and you can look at Wikipedia, and they've got pages of complex mathematics that I have no idea what it means, and supposedly it all has to do with gravity. But again, in actuality, everything can be explained through density and buoyancy without assuming that there's this magical pulling force that pulls things towards the center. They call it a mutual attraction of masses, and that a mass, by virtue of its mass alone, causes this force called gravity, which causes other smaller masses to orbit or stick to those larger masses. But they can't actually show you any example in nature where this happens. They can't show you some object that's so massive. Why can't they create some CERN, massive thing that's so massive and dense enough that they could at least cause a dust bunny to gravitize around it? They can't create any sort of experiment to prove that this gravity exists, but yet it's their catch-all explanation for everything that they can't explain. So really, the science that people think is so solid that we've been believing with gravity and astronomy and the whole Big Bang cosmology with billions of planets and stars and suns and all this is all science fiction. What's actually going on is we're on a flat plane. I don't know how far the flat plane goes. That's still a mystery. But the sun, moon, stars, all the celestial bodies rotate around us. And this has been proven, too. Since the 1800s, they've done experiments. You can look up Airy's failure is one. George Airy put water in a telescope to slow down the starlight coming in, and comparing it with control telescopes, you're able to see whether it's the starlight that's moving over us relative to a stationary Earth, or is it the moving Earth rotating under a relatively stationary star. And this and many other experiments by Michelson, Morley, Gale, Sagnac, and some others in that time proved that the celestial objects in the sky are all revolving around us, and we are completely still. Those conclusive findings, however, were philosophically debunked by Einstein and his relativity theory, where he banished the absolute ether to absolute relativity and said that you can't determine what is the most central thing in the solar system, and even what is moving around what, essentially, because everything is moving and everything is relative to everything else, and we don't know where the center or the edge of the universe is. So this like absolute relativity is what I call it. It's a paradox, but through this philosophical paradox of absolute relativity, they banished these conclusive experiments that prove that the Earth is stationary and everything's revolving around us. Since then, we've had planes that can prove even further that the Earth is stationary, helicopters as well. You'd think if the Earth was revolving under us, you could just hover up in a helicopter and the Earth would revolve underneath, and then you could land when your destination got to you. But of course, they tell us that the magic of gravity holds the atmosphere to the spinning ball too, and so, relatively speaking, you're moving with the ball. Okay. But they've done experiments with projectile cannons as well as planes taking off in all cardinal directions. And if the Earth was spinning 1,000 miles per hour eastward, as they say, and the average commercial airliner goes about 500 miles per hour, your eastward destinations should come up behind you long before you ever reach them. That's just a fact of this. But it's not the case that going in any direction changes the resistance or speed of a airplane. So, and you can imagine how difficult it would be to try to land on a runway that was going at 1,000 miles per hour. Pilots land at all 360 degrees. If the Earth was actually spinning tilted 23 degrees on its axis like that, the only way it would be able to come in on the runway would have to be on very specific angles, otherwise it would be totally off. But again, they just tell you the magic of gravity and the Velcro of the atmosphere somehow makes it so that that's all negligible. Another thing they say is negligible is that, if the Earth was a ball and you're flying over it, you'd have to descend gradually to stay at the same altitude. But it's not the case. Whenever pilots are flying, they go up to their desired altitude, they level off, and their artificial horizon remains level, and they just keep on going until they're ready at their destination, ready to come down. at 500 miles per hour, they would actually have to descend approximately a half a mile every minute just to stay at the same altitude. And this just doesn't happen. If the Earth was a ball and they didn't descend, after a half hour, you'd be out into outer space just from going straight, right? I can go on. Like I said,
Yeah.
I've written a book about it. Maybe what I should ask you instead, which is more fun, is why do you think you're on a spinning ball, Jeff?
Well, I don't. I'm glad you asked me a question on that because I have a lot of thoughts on that. I was just thinking as you were writing or talking. Sorry, I was writing, trying to take some notes. That what I've found in my life is that, okay, I'm going to give you an example. I started off more the economics side of things when I started to wake up. So my first introduction to, hey, maybe we don't need government, maybe government is evil, was after the tech bubble burst in 2000, and there seemed to be no explanation for it. So I started looking into how the money system worked, and the very first book I read was The Creature from Jekyll Island, and I was like, whoa, this is not what you're told. And then I just kept looking into it and looking into it, and the further I looked into it, in Austrian economics and stuff, and, back then, especially, I was like, hey, I've got to learn this economics because, I have to understand how this system works. I'm quite involved in the financial monetary systems, investing, things like that. If I don't understand economics, that's crazy. And I looked at like what they teach you in school, and it's all these formulas and craziness and Keynesian sort of craziness. We add up all these numbers and then that tells you what the economy will do. It's like, okay, so I was like, well, I'm not smart enough for that kind of stuff. But then I found the Austrian School of Economics and they're like, no, you just look at everything from first principles. You just say, this is the way it is, and you go from there. You don't need all these formulas and stuff. And so what I've discovered over time is that in the economics profession, there's a ton of garbage they just teach you in school, and it actually makes it look really confusing. And like you have to like be like this super genius in math to even think about becoming a really serious economist. But what I found out is most of that stuff, or quite a bit at least, is totally just BS. Is like, it has nothing to do with anything. It's useless at the very best. And so when you ask me, like, why do I believe that I am on a spinning ball or whatever, what came to mind is that, a few years ago, I looked into the, it's called the Thunderbolt of the Gods, the electric universe theory. We'll put a link to that video down below. And the same thing with astronomy. I was like, oh, I don't know. They've got all these computer models, and I'm not very good at math. That's my thing. And I was like, how could I ever even understand any of this stuff? And then I watched the Thunderbolt of the Gods, the electric universe theory, and it just made sense. They just asked questions like, why does a comet have a trail of stuff coming off of it, ice or whatever it is, if it's, they've got all these things. And I was like, that makes total sense. If you watch the Thunderbolt from the Gods, you'll understand what I'm saying. And so basically I've come to the conclusion that I just have to use my own brain and my own senses and my own ability to perceive information and go from there. I can't listen to these professors and PhDs because I think they're mostly just spinning garbage. And so that's why I'm so open to what you're talking about, because you're right. I don't feel like I'm on a spinning ball. I might be. I don't know. This is a very new idea, by the way, started by the Masons, 500 years ago or whatever. And before that, it was fairly understood you were on the flat Earth. Then something happened. Some people took over and started killing you if you said you weren't. And then so yeah, it is definitely all the perceptions that I have go with your theory, and that's why I'm attracted to it. Maybe it's that physical law of attraction or whatever, that I'm open to these ideas. I'm listening to you and writing notes as you speak because it makes so much sense.
Right on. So, thinking about it, back to your education, do you remember any proofs that you were taught as to why you're on a spinning ball? Why is the Earth a ball? Or things you've seen on television, perhaps?
Well, I just didn't go to school much. I think that's why I am able to think fairly freely and not just listen to dogma and not just accept and repeat what I'm told. But no, I think it's mostly just growing up in a situation where, like you said, you got that globe on the desk. You listen to the news or anything, and they talk about NASA did this in outer space, and here's the photos of the Earth, which now that I look at them, they all look fake. But so yeah, I think you're just sort of ensconced in this sort of environment where these things are just never brought up, and so you just assume it must be the case.
Yeah, you got it, man. And yeah, like you're saying, the people that are the most indoctrinated are the professors and the people who've looked into this so much. They've just been buying what is being told to them by authority, and so they're arguing from authority, and you can see it in the comment sections of everything I make. The argument is always from authority. When you argue from evidence, experience, and experiments, you're going to come to a flat, motionless Earth every single time.
Yeah, I'm sure we're gonna have a million comments down below, and I have this one. There's a few people every now and then that say this. They say, you're hurting the liberty movement by talking about things like this, because a lot of people think this is crazy, including myself. They say, and it's usually some little loser, and I've had this happen even just in the last few weeks. Just some loser who's never done anything, and he's like watching you because he's never done anything, so he's got to watch everything you're doing, and they'll say, you can't talk about this stuff because you're hurting the liberty movement. It's like, fuck off. You're not doing anything for the liberty movement. I'm working like morning to night on it. I've probably brought in more people than most people into the liberty movement in the last few years. So yeah, go, take a walk, you're a bunch of losers. So we'll see that down in the comments down below. But let's talk to the people that are really into science, or as I'm starting to call it, scientism, after I got that word from Mark Passio. There's going to be a lot of people who are really into the science. And hey, don't get me wrong, I think it's possible that the science stuff is right. I don't know. I have to see with my own eyes more to see it. But they're going to say stuff like, what about when they, there's all these scientific sort of reasons why, that this can't be right. Maybe you can talk about a few of those sort of things that you debunk a little bit from the flat Earth theory, how some of these, what the people are going to say about how science proves this is wrong. Like, for example, some experiments or something like that. I'm sure you know more about it than me.
Sure. Yeah, this is what I was trying to get out of you in the first place. So, yeah, so for instance, people will usually come at you with, well, what about circumnavigation? That's one you learn in school. We can circumnavigate the globe, so it must be a globe. You can go all the way around it. So if the Earth was flat, you couldn't go around a flat Earth. But the flat Earth model, what we're looking at here is, imagine a disk with Antarctica being an ice ring all around it, and the oceans being held in, and the North Pole at the middle. So with this model, circumnavigation just means east to west, like a compass point, set it in the middle. You can trace a circle. And Magellan's journey, for instance, basically was that, with a few inlets and outlets along the way. All he did was go around from east to west, the flat Earth. This doesn't prove that you're on a globe or a flat Earth either way. It can go either way. So basically, the circumnavigation proof is not a proof at all. It could happen regardless of whether the Earth was flat or a ball. Another scientific proof that they'll come at you with is that ships, as they're disappearing on the horizon, as they get further and further away, the bottom, the hull, will start to disappear before the masthead. And so what's happening is it's slowly going over the curvature of the Earth. It's going over the ball. And this is, Aristotle used this. This has been a proof of the ball Earth for a long time. The ball Earth has been theorized back as far as Pythagoras 2,500 years ago, but it didn't really pick up steam until 500 years ago. But so anyway, yeah, this one is one they use a lot. But in actuality, if you use binoculars, a zoom camera, a telescope, after the ship has completely disappeared over the horizon, you can bring it completely back into view, proving that it hasn't descended over a wall of convex water, but in fact it's just gone beyond your perspective. The horizon line is not the curvature of the ball Earth as you're told. The horizon line is the vanishing line of perspective from your point of view. And that's why as you raise altitude or on a clearer day or with a zoom camera, you're able to see further and further along the horizon. It's not a fixed point as it would be on a ball, as they tell you. So again, this is another supposed scientific proof of the ball Earth, but when you do experiments yourself with a telescope, you can see that that's bunk, and in fact, you've proven the opposite.
And just, I know there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be devil's advocating, watching this. So I'll do it for them because I've asked these questions as well. So my question was, why, if it's a flat Earth, why couldn't you stand on the coast of California with a telescope and see Japan or Hawaii or something? And I think you know the answer to that. I'll let you answer that.
Yeah. You can't see an unlimited distance, regardless of whether the Earth is flat or a globe. And the lowest layer of the atmosphere is the densest and not transparent. So if you imagine like a hot, humid day, the haze over a road, all telescopes will eventually blur out in that same kind of way due to the air. So no, you can't see an infinite distance. And the reason people think this, again, is they think that when they point their telescopes up, that they're seeing starlight from trillions and trillions of miles away, because that's what they've been told by NASA. Now, in fact, you can measure with sextants and plane trigonometry how far away the sun, moon, and stars are, and they figure to be only a few thousand miles off the surface of the Earth. But they tell you that they're, like, the closest star is 25 trillion miles away, 4.2 light years away. Their science fiction term they created to make it sound more plausible. And the reason they give these ridiculously long distances to the stars is because they have to for it to fit their model. Because day after day, year after year, the fixed stars stay fixed in their constellations as they revolve over and around us. But what they say is that the Earth is spinning, and it's spinning around the sun, and the sun is spinning around the Milky Way, and the Milky Way is spinning around the known universe. And so you've got spinning upon spinning, and it's faster and faster, all these multiple spins happening. But if this is the case, you'd see movement in the stars. So the only way they can claim that you don't see movement is to use this ridiculously huge mathematics to make the math fit. So if you say the closest star is 25 trillion miles away, then you can still say that, oh, there's no parallax change between the fixed stars every year because they're just so far away. But no, you can't see that far through even the best telescope. And by the way, the Hubble telescope doesn't exist, and all the images supposedly coming from the Hubble telescope are wonderful CGI Photoshop. Look again.
Yeah, I was just looking that up yesterday. So, I'm just like looking at, okay, let's go look at what the Hubble telescope things are. I've never looked at them. I don't care that much. I'm busy doing my own thing. So I said, well, what's this Hubble taking anyway? So I went and looked at the images, and these images are, wow, these are amazing. Like, how are they getting such amazing images? Like, why don't they turn it back around on the Earth and get some really amazing images of the Earth? Like, they don't really have any images of the ball Earth that's ever been taken, right? Like, that was my question. And I actually had another one too, was about Antarctica. This is a really interesting one in my opinion, and I want to hear your answer. It appears like no one has ever crossed Antarctica from one side of the Earth to the other side of the Earth, even in a plane. Which seems insane to me, and maybe you know of some evidence that they have, but I don't know of any. Or at least someone's claiming that they have. And so I was sort of chatting with a friend the other day, because I've been so interested in this, I've been looking it up, and I said, well, if, we really just need to get a plane and fly it over Antarctica, like just to see what's going on. And my friend who doesn't know anything about your theories or anything, he said, oh, no, it's just way too cold. And I'm like, well, they fly over the North Pole pretty much all the time. And he said, no, it's just way too cold. It's too big, too, down there. And I said, well, in the 1960s, they had the technology to fly to the moon, which is way colder and way hotter, play some golf, drive around in a golf cart, and come back. Why can't we ever get a plane to fly over Antarctica? So I'll let you respond to that one.
Absolutely, exactly. That's exactly what they say. They say that it's too cold, and that's why there aren't these flights. But there's flights from Australia to South America, for instance, that if the Antarctica is a little ice continent underneath the ball, as they tell us, then you should take the most direct flight. But they don't take the most direct flight in all these cases. They go around, the long way around, and the excuse they give is that it's too cold. And like you said, well, that doesn't make any sense because it's way colder and hotter out there on the moon and on the way to the moon that they supposedly went. So why is Antarctica giving them such a problem? And,
yeah, so they haven't gone to the bottom of the ocean yet. The more you think about it, it's like a lot of things don't make any sense. It's like, well, if they can do this, why can't they do that? And if they can do that so easily, why can't they just fly over the Antarctica? And then, of course, as you know, and you mentioned Antarctica is pretty much a no man's zone. It's a militarized zone. If you try to get in there, you'll probably be turned back. So they don't want you to know what's there, from what I can tell.
That's right, yeah. People like Jarl Anderhoy have been turned away when you try to just go there on your own without one of their pre-approved tour groups. They will turn you away at gunpoint, fine you, and put you in jail. They don't take kindly to that at all. And yeah, they don't want you to expose the hoax. There's a UN treaty that's been going on since the 50s there, so they don't let anyone in there other than their pre-approved guided tours that they take people to the fake South Pole. They've got a ceremonial South Pole there at an arbitrary point along the Antarctic ice, and they take people there. It's a little barbershop red and white pole, and there's a ball earth on top of it. And they take photos there and tell people that they're at the South Pole. And it's interesting, though, you can hear on a BBC clip them talking about how, well, it's not actually the South Pole. The real South Pole is somewhere, several meters away.
Everyone's made it, all 12 of them, the whole group of 20, whatever it is, but the 12 wounded soldiers have made it. Couldn't have made it without everyone's help, especially back home. The founders, Ed and Simon as well. But everyone is so happy. Everyone's touched the ball. We've all had photos. We've all had hugs, a few tears here and there. But all in all, mission success, basically.
If you're wondering about that ball that he was talking about, it's the ceremonial South Pole at the Amundsen Scott South Pole Station. It's like a metal sphere on a red and white pole, and it's partly surrounded by the flags of the signatories of the Antarctic Treaty. So it's lovely for a photo, but the problem with it is it's not the real South Pole. It's about 300 meters away.
So at the real South Pole, what is that?
Well, there's nothing. That's the thing. You can't see. To do it properly, to cover all your bases, you have to do both. You have to do the picture with the ball, and then you have to go and kind of hang around at the exact
why don't they move
longitude
the ball to
and
where
latitude.
the actual thing is?
Well, that's a very sensible question. It's
work
not one I
on.
can answer,
Okay.
but it's a very good point.
And so they tell us with this spinning ball Earth model is that the magnetism of the ball Earth happens from the molten metal core in the middle of the ball, and it causes the geomagnetic poles to constantly shift, so the north and south poles are constantly moving. So this is their perfect excuse that they can give for when people go to the South Pole and break out a compass and see that north isn't in every direction as they go around the pole. They can just say, oh, well, the pole's constantly moving, so there's no way that you can find it. And in the North Pole documentaries, they never break out a compass there either, nor do they give any star readings to prove that they actually are at the North Pole. So I'm quite skeptical of all the footage I've seen claiming to be at the North Pole or the South Pole. Whether they're actually there. They just show a Garmin, which is GPS, Global Positioning System, which is created by the U.S. military. And I'm not trusting the U.S. military just to show me 90 degrees north latitude on a Garmin, and I believe that they're where they say they are. So yeah, I have some serious questions about why people can't go to the North Pole or to Antarctica and independently explore it. Pilots are also not allowed to go over there independently. They have some polar routes, they're called, but they don't go directly over the North Pole, and nor do they ever circumnavigate under the supposed ball from one side of Antarctica to the other. They always go around. You can check for yourself on all these flights. If the Earth was really a ball and they can survive the cold of outer space, they should be able to fly a straight route across Antarctica.
Yeah, you'd think we'd have the technology for that, to just fly a plane from South America to, I guess, what's on the other side in their theory, Africa or something. You know, I think we should push for this. Let's do like a crowdfund or something to try to do the first manned aircraft flight over Antarctica. We probably need about at least well, I don't know what we'd need to, because if your theory is right, they probably won't be coming back because they'd get so far that they wouldn't have any gas to get back. And I don't know what's out there, but probably not anywhere good to land. Right. And who knows, but or they get shot down. That's probably the other thing, especially as it got public. So if you're a really rich guy out there, if you're a billionaire and you want to do something super cool for humanity, and you're willing to die, try to fly over Antarctica and see what happens, and try to get us that information back somehow in real time using some sort of radio frequencies or something, so that we know what you see before you die, as you either get shot down or something else happens probably. Or if you get to the other side, great, then this theory's wrong and that's it. But you know, this is what we have to do, is question these things and look at real evidence. And like you pointed out, after everything I've seen, I don't listen to anything the government says. I don't believe anything the government says, and that's where I start. So you said, oh, the government says here's your Garmin with your GPS. It's like, well, who made up GPS? Oh, the U.S. military. Okay, I don't believe it. Like, I believe those numbers are there, and I believe they actually work on where we live to get from place to place. But as far as it being a whole theory that makes sense, and I'm just going to take it from them, no.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd like to see some experiments done like that. If people could get a drone or a plane, either the North Pole or Antarctica, or take ships out there and try to walk it out. Somebody could fund Matt Boyland. He was trying to get an expedition to go from any entry point in Antarctica in a straight line and see whether he comes out the other side or what happens. What else could people do? Yeah, I'm up for anything. I would love to see people who are, you know, once you figure out this is definitely what's going on. As far as I'm concerned, we don't actually need to do this to figure out the Earth is not spinning and not a ball. That's been decided. But as far as what's beyond the Antarctic ice, that I don't know. Whether there's an edge, a barrier, a dome, or an infinite plane, and it just goes on forever. Who knows?
Yeah, we should point out that it is kind of dangerous to talk about these things. There was David Cameron, the prime sinister or the prime murderer of the UK, was at the One World Government headquarters, the UN, which actually uses the flat Earth as a flag. That's very interesting. And he said that the non-violent extremism is just as dangerous as terrorism and must be eradicated using all means at the government's disposal. He references 9/11 and 7/7 truthers, examples of the type of extremism that must be dealt in a similar fashion to ISIS. And of course, the U.S. government started, and the CIA is ISIS. So, but no, this is quite serious. What he's saying is that they should kill us if we question what they're saying. And so, you know, for people out there, if you're wondering why you don't hear a lot of these other theories, or especially this theory, it's probably because people are too scared to say it. Like, if we're gone in the next few months and I die of a heart attack or something, and Eric, whatever, some strange car crashes unexpectedly, you know, pretty much you can assume that we probably got taken out. But what we got to do is spread this information. And I'm not saying, again, I'm not 100% on the flat Earth. I'm going to need to see more evidence, but I think the evidence is incredibly compelling to the point where I will continue to look into it for sure. I think it is a point, though, as well, that David Cameron said that us people who are questioning what they're saying essentially is what he's saying, and actually rationally looking at the evidence. He's saying that we're as dangerous to them as terrorism. And that's actually right, because if enough people wake up and look at all the evidence and listen to their own senses and what they're seeing, and not to some professor on TV who's got all these charts and numbers that you don't understand and probably no one understands, and if anyone understands it, they probably don't even get that how it relates to anything. They're just like math freaks or something. This actually is dangerous to the government, and he's right. And so they're going to try to shut it down any way they can. So we have to just get this information out there. I'm not saying, again, that I'm a flat earther yet. Man, the more you look into it, I'm going to have to see some real solid evidence that I can see with my own eyes to prove one way or another at this point, I think.
Yeah, man. The second president of the International Flat Earth Research Society, Charles K. Johnson, he had his house burned down and all of his flat earth materials, books, correspondence, his whole library, and he swore till his dying day that it was a NASA agent that did it, who also tried to kill him on more than one occasion. So there's definitely that aspect to it. They also have controlled opposition set up to defer people away from the legitimate flat Earth. So, for instance, the International Flat Earth Research Society I just mentioned was started in 1957, and in 1970 they started out the Flat Earth Society of Canada, and then they took off the word Canada right away. And this one was a satirical society set up to control the opposition, to make it look ridiculous. And they did a wonderful job. Their president, Leo Ferrari, would go on television interviews claiming to be a flat earther, but then doing ridiculous things like taking on a big rock and saying, I was just at the edge of the earth and I almost fell off. I lost all my shipmates, but I held on to this rock and I saved me. And so I just brought this here from the edge of the flat earth to show you. And he'd say things like this. And nowadays, the Flat Earth Society promotes false flat Earth arguments, such as the flat Earth disk constantly rising to account for gravity. They say instead of the force of gravity pulling us down, the flat Earth disk constantly rises up. And they claim that this is what flat Earthers believe. But as I said earlier, we don't take gravity as being real in the first place. We just take experience and experiments, the Zetetic method as it's called, just common sense. You don't need to, Occam's razor, you don't need to make unnecessary assumptions and call something gravity when it's completely explained with the already existing laws of density and buoyancy. So that's characteristic of their pseudoscience that's nowadays taught as science. And when somebody presents you with ideas of a flat Earth or a geocentric system, that's thought of as ancient pseudoscience that our ignorant ancestors believed, when in fact the experiments, experience, evidence, common sense is actually on that side, and we've been fed a bill of lies, pseudoscience, for so long that we believe it to be science.
Yeah, they always try to flip everything like to be the opposite of what it really is. And when I say they, I don't know exactly totally everything about all this stuff, but it appears to be Freemasonry seems to be a big one involved in what they call the occult, hiding the knowledge. Occult just means hidden. And for whatever reason, over the last few hundred years, it looks like they have just decided they don't want people to know what life is. They want to totally try to confuse them in every single way, including the money system. If you're in the U.S. and you pull out a $1 bill, just look at the back of the $1 bill. That's the Masonry symbol, the all-seeing eye pyramid. So you have an occult symbol in your pocket. So this is not crazy theories. This is what's going on. I've heard that what they're trying to do is trying to get humanity away from God, whatever God is, spirit, gods, from themselves, from understanding truth, from being human, basically. And I don't know why they're doing that, and I don't know if it's satanic, or I don't know if they're just screwed up psychopaths. I don't know, and maybe you do know. And if you feel you have some evidence on that, let me know. But isn't that right, that it's basically been sort of from Freemasonry, they've been trying to hide this knowledge for a long time? And if it is true, do you know why they're trying to do it?
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, on the dollar bill, the mono eye, that's the one eye of Freemasonry, of the Illuminati, whatever you want to call it. So money is definitely part of the scheme. As you mentioned, the UN, their symbol, their logo, their flag is a flat earth. And it's divided like a target, like a bullseye. It's divided into 33 sections. And, there's 33 degrees of Freemasonry. The first 3 degrees are called the blue degrees. The flag also happens to be blue. So yeah, you've got that encoded there. And then the people who originally brought us the spinning ball Earth from all the way back to Pythagoras and Copernicus, Galileo, Newton, Kepler, these people are all Freemasons as well. I showed in my Freemasons Exposed book, there's pictures, paintings of them doing Freemasonic hand signs, standing with Freemasonic objects and everything. And of course, nowadays, the NASA astronauts are unabashed Masons. You can just look online and find that literally every astronaut that claims to have walked on the moon, and every astronaut that even claims to have been in Earth orbit is a Mason, or their father was a Mason, and it's openly admitted. So this deception has been orchestrated by and acted out by these actor-nauts, or astronauts, depending on how you look at it. They're Freemasons, on the mathematical, astronomical side, as well as the exploratory astronaut side, the whole thing. Even the Hollywood side, Hollywood is run by Freemasonry as well. So the special effects, everything they're using, right from their gravity, think of the G in the compass and the square, another possible meaning for that G. You've got God, geometry, gnosis, and perhaps gravity, their biggest deception. And you can see even Masons today, like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Carl Sagan, they're always given their little Masonic hand signs and whatnot. So it's definitely part of the big boys club that's given us every other deception, and it's worth looking into based on that alone. And the more you look into it, the more you're going to find that, like you were saying, the reason they've done this is to position themselves as the authority. Once they tell you that because of their special telescopes and their special rockets and all these technologies that they have that you don't, that are able to see out into the cosmos and determine all of these things, that they are the authority, and so you have to go to them, you have to watch their documentaries, you have to go to Neil deGrasse Tyson, and you gotta prostrate yourself at his feet and ask, "Oh, mighty NDT, tell me please, what is the universe like?" And you give up your own common sense and your own experience to him, and he tells you that you're on a spinning ball, and he tells you all the, he weaves quite a nice story, and he does a lot of nice little NLP stuff. I don't know how he does it. Well, you got the Mason hand signs going, you got the little NLP, you got the flat earthers over here, and the ball earthers over here, So they've got all their little magician tricks that they're using, from CGI to zero-G planes to underwater pools, to make you think that they're floating in outer space. But in reality, what goes up must come down. There is no point where you can just go up in a rocket and suddenly pop out into the nothingness, the vacuum of infinite space, they call it, which is a paradox if I've ever heard one. How can there be a vacuum in infinite space when it's adjacent to an atmosphere and not separated in any way? You can't have a vacuum. And how does gravity pull you back to the Earth, but then get less and less to the point that you float? How does that happen? And they say that the atmosphere is spinning because the gravity is sticking it to it. So if you figure that, the Earth is spinning at 1,000 miles per hour, but then as you go up higher and higher, the atmosphere must be spinning even faster because it's further away from the point of the center of rotation. So as you're going up in your rocket, you're going through layer after layer of constantly faster and faster spinning atmosphere hitting your rocket until finally you pop out into non-spinning vacuum of infinite space, says NASA. Interesting that we all buy this and just accept this, even though it's physically and philosophically impossible. We just watch a little CGI image and a little camera trickery. You splice a rocket launch together with something else, and then you think that they're in outer space. But again, if you use your eyes and you watch those rockets, you'll see that they don't go straight up. Every single rocket forms a parabolic curve, just like every amateur rocket, just like any projectile that you would send up. It couldn't just go straight up and keep on going until you go into outer space. It comes right back down. but what does NASA tell you? And you ask them the question, well, why is there a parabola formed by all of your rockets? Well, that's because it's going to spin around the ball Earth before it reaches escape velocity, and then it will go out into outer space from there. Right. I've seen a documentary full of nothing but NASA rocket launch failures, and if you just watch that, I don't think you'll be able to believe that they've put a man on the moon or even put a rocket out as far into outer space as these supposed ISS images are coming from. It's absolutely ridiculous. The technology we have is nothing like the science fiction that we've been shown.
Yeah, it's amazing. So much deception. You know, I was talking, we could talk forever about this. I don't want to keep you too long. And if people really like this, we can have Eric back on another time to do it and maybe answer your questions or whatever. And if you don't like it, then that's the last time he's on because I need ratings. So I'm just joking. So I was chatting with a friend who, again, was because he's a very science guy, which is fine, you know, whatever. And he said, we started talking about the space station. And I said, why do they even have the space station? Why don't they just put it on the moon? And he was like, well, no, they want to have it there because they want to study orbits or whatever. And I said, okay. And I said, well, why don't they just put one on the moon? It was so easy like 45 years ago just to fly up, drive around a go-kart, play golf, take some really awesome, amazing pictures and then just, hop in like this little tinfoil thing and then float in outer space and then come back and then it was really easy back then. I don't know what's changed since then, but why don't they put like something on the moon, like, because now I'm hearing they're starting to talk about Mars and they're like, we want to do put humans on Mars and start a colony. It's like, why don't you do it on the moon? It's so much closer, according to what you guys say. It's like, and it'd be so much easier. And if it's so easy to get to the moon, the guys on the space station should, just every weekend go to the moon. Why not? They're already out there. It's just like, bloop, hop in that little tinfoil thing and just, land down, no problem, go, drive around a bit, have some fun, then come back. It'd be like a nice little weekend getaway because the hard part's really, according to them, getting outside of the atmosphere, right? So once they're out there, yeah, just take off to the moon for the weekend, but they never do. No one's ever going there. I don't know why. It's strange.
That's a good point. Yeah, why haven't they been back there in 45 years? And yeah, if you look at the moon on a clear night during a waxing or waning cycle, you can see through it. Especially if you look during the afternoon, you'll notice that the supposed craters on the moon, you can see the blue sky right through those craters. Just look up, type in moon afternoon or something in Google and take a look. Or when you can see the moon sometime around 4 or 5 o'clock, when it's still, the sky's still blue, the sun's still out a little bit, but you still got the moon there, you'll notice that what is called craters is clearly not craters. And the supposed solid globe-shaped moon that they've presented us with cannot be the case because you're seeing right through it. And even astronomers from the Royal Astronomical Association from hundreds of years ago have have written periodically having seen stars and planets through the moon. So like the popular Islamic flag and the symbol you see on mosques, for instance, with a crescent moon and a star occulting it, that actually happens. You can see that happen. So the moon, it appears, is its own unique light. It's semi-transparent and self-luminescent, whereas they tell us it's a spherical terra firma body that reflects sunlight. But you can prove that this is not the case and that the sun and the moon are actually the same size as they appear. That's another thing. We were talking about things that you can see with your eyes but then are told to be different by so-called science. They tell us the sun is 400 times bigger and 400 times further away than the moon. And from our faulty parallax perspective, we just see them appearing as exactly the same size. But no, one's really big and really far away. But if you're just using your own eyes, you would see that they are the same size. And the horizon is flat, and the Earth isn't moving, and everything in the heavens does revolve around us. Yeah, like you said, why haven't they been to the moon? Because you can't go to the moon. The moon is just a light. It's not a spherical terra firma, Earth-like body that you can land masons on.
Yeah, we should keep this a little shorter because I think if anyone's watched this far, they already know most of this stuff. And if they haven't watched this far, then they've already given up because they're like, oh, these guys are crazy, so there's no point even talking any further. So, but there's probably some people who are like, whoa, and watching and watching and watching. So why don't you let us know where people can get more information on this sort of stuff? That's one thing I noticed. It seems to be all over the place. Maybe you, since you've already written what I consider the only book I know of that looks like it makes a lot of sense, The Flat Earth Conspiracy. Maybe you can sort of figure out a way that people can, or maybe you already have it, some sort of place where people can put evidence that proves the flat Earth theory that can be all collected, actual evidence using video cameras and showing, whatever. It obviously could be fake, but some sort of repository for this information that you can build off. But anyway, let people know where they should go if they want more information on the flat Earth and about your books and everything else.
Yeah, I actually just restarted the International Flat Earth Research Society that I was talking about earlier that ended after he died and his materials were all burnt down. So I started it up again as a forum, and I've put on all the materials that I have on there, and everybody on there is collecting their own experiments and evidence as well. So I definitely recommend going over there if you're interested in learning more about the flat Earth. It's ifers.boards.net, which is ifers.boards.net. My website is atlanteanconspiracy.com. I have a flat Earth section on there. You can see a bunch of research I've compiled there. And my book, The Flat Earth Conspiracy, you can get from the website as well. I have a documentary called The Flat Earth Conspiracy you can see on YouTube. Go to my YouTube channel, Eric Dubay, and actually I have a lot of documentaries on the flat Earth and other related subjects. That's a good place to go if you're wanting to look into some more of this information. Check out Eric Dubay, ERICDUBAY, on YouTube.
That's great, and I have to say, after talking to you in person, I'm even getting closer to pretty much being a flat Earth person. I think I'm going to hold that still because I haven't done enough research on my own to be totally comfortable. But just the way you are and the way you talk and how you're on the same wavelength as me on 9/11 and all these things says to me that either we're both crazy, which a lot of people are going to say, or I should listen to you because you're on the similar track to me, so you can bring me a lot more information which I can decipher and figure out for my own self, make my own decision on what I think is correct. But in fascinating stuff. I'm really glad to have had you on. I think we're probably going to end up having you on again if you're open to it because already we're up to an hour here, and we want to make this quite a good video as well, so we're going to put in some graphics and stuff. So this could be quite a bit of work for a lot of people involved here to kind of show you what Eric's talking about. So let's keep this one to about an hour now. And like I said, if you like this, if you're interested, you want more, please comment anywhere you see this on Facebook or on YouTube and just say, yeah, I want to hear more about this. And if not, no big deal. It was just information. We're just trying to figure out what's real and what's not. And there's a lot more unreal out there than we appear to know. So we're just digging into all that kind of stuff. And now we're the terrorists. So welcome to 1984. And so, if you like this information, share, like, subscribe to this channel. Download this may get taken off YouTube, and that should be a sort of a little bit of hint. YouTube owned by Google, I believe, with the slogan "Don't be evil." I think it's should be don't expose evil is really what it is. And so yeah, like, download this, put it on something that can't be destroyed by an electromagnetic pulse, which they could totally do at any time. All this kind of stuff. They want to hang on to their control of this reality grid, and the more that we can just get information out there, the better. So please like, subscribe, share, and download this video and keep it and re-upload it. I don't care. Re-upload it anywhere on any video channel because they will probably be starting to ban a lot of these pretty soon if people start talking about it. And so that's it for Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. Peace, love, and anarchy.